holidays are always a tough time, particularly for a variety of reasons, and we'll kind of address some of those in the presentation. At any point, if there's questions, it can be related to holiday eating, related to being fit around the holidays. It can be completely not. Feel free at any point. This is pretty open, so ask me questions. I like talking about it and just hearing about your guys' experiences, because these are based off of my experiences and what I've talked to other people, but it could be different from what you're going through or notice. So I'd love to hear some more info. But yeah, so basically what prompted this whole thing, the holidays. Anytime somebody is trying to be very, very healthy in their life, it usually gets unhinged from certain specific events where maybe we are not in our normal eating pattern or our diet pattern. Say you go on vacation, say there's birthdays, maybe there's, let's say, I hate to say funerals, but basically different things and times in our life where maybe it's very stressful. You might have lost your job, all these different things, or times that it's happy. It's a wedding, honeymoon, all these different things, a baby. These events can be great and also bad for our health in a variety of ways. So holidays specifically are very difficult because it's a very large amount of time. If we think about the holidays, it's maybe 2.5 months out of the entire year, what I would consider like the holiday season. Basically from the start of November, maybe around Halloween, to maybe a couple weeks after January into the New Year's, I would consider that all being the holiday season. And if we think about being healthy, that's almost a third of the entire year that maybe our health patterns can be kind of separated from what we normally would be. Maybe this isn't the case for yourself, but if you look at a lot of people in normal society, it's very, very prevalent. So if you think about being healthy through the rest of the year, if you're able to do pretty okay through these times where it's typically difficult, you're with family a lot, it should be, in theory, fairly easy the rest of the year, at least from my perspective. So some of the big ideas when it comes to being healthy around the holidays and whether it's maintaining your figure, trying to be good with your blood work, all these different things. Big ideas, and these are the first two things on your notes. Calories in, as in the amount of food or liquids or just overall nutrition you're taking in, versus the calories out, as in the amount of food you are burning, energy you are burning, I should say. And this could be from physical activity, this can be from your body just burning energy to keep yourself alive. That's something that people don't often realize. It's called your metabolism, is all the different processes that happen in your body that actually take energy to use. That takes a lot of calories, actually the most amount of calories. In addition to this, there's a small amount of calories it takes to burn food that you eat. So calories in, what you eat, versus calories out, what you burn, will dictate your overall weight. That's a huge thing to realize when you're navigating meals, when you're navigating working out for health, for weight loss. It doesn't matter what you eat, as long as you are in, say you're trying to lose weight. Most people are trying to lose weight. Hello, friend. Feel free, it doesn't matter what you eat, as long as you're in an energy balance. So, for example, if you eat 2,000 calories a day of anything, and I'm not gonna say this is gonna make you feel good. Say you eat 2,000 calories of candy bars. Holidays, we'll use holidays. Christmas cookies. You eat 2,000 calories of Christmas cookies, and every single day, your body burns 2,500 calories to maintain the weight and do all your exercise, physical activity. You will actually lose weight, even though you only ate cookies. You're gonna feel like complete garbage, and I would never recommend that to people, but it's just a very, hi there, feel free to come in. No? Okay. It's a very extreme example just to prove a point that although nutrition is very important for your health, as in your blood work and how you feel, your energy and mood. It isn't the primary driver of your body weight. So point number one, big idea. I guess the point number two, I already kind of mentioned, the makeup of the calories will dictate how you feel, your mood, your energy levels, which is probably equally as important, because if you don't feel good, the chances that you're going to exercise and have good mood, have good energy throughout the day to do all these things that you need to do, or maybe just enjoy times with families, it's going to go down tremendously. So although you can eat hypothetically 2,000 calories of Christmas cookies, if you burn 2,500 calories a day and lose weight, you're not going to have energy. You're not going to feel good. Your blood work's probably going to show. Funny study that I like to bring up during this time, there's this scientist, I can't remember from what university, but he actually did it's called a Twinkie diet study. He found out that through basically, there's certain calorie conversion things where you can be in this tank and it tells you how many calories you burn, and they found that out. So it's a very scientific, pretty much exact number of how many he burns in a day. They had him eat a multivitamin every day, and then a bunch of different types of Hostess, Twinkies, Little Debbie snacks, and he lost weight just because he was in a calorie deficit. That's all he ate with the multivitamin. He also lost a lot of muscle. He lost bone mineral density, which is basically how hard your bones are. And he lost a lot of water weight too. So he lost a lot of lean mass, but again, kind of just driving home the point of calories will dictate everything, which is a huge point when we're looking at the meals we're eating, what kind of foods we're consuming, and just talking about moderation. So the next thing I have here, and this is going to give you some ideas, but what makes it hard to eat around the holidays? And don't look at the ideas too much, maybe you already have, but what makes it hard for you when you're thinking about the holiday eating, just generally speaking? It's probably an easy one. Meals with family. What kind of food's normally at those meals? Is it chicken and broccoli? No, never, right? It's like the best things on the planet. I already mentioned Christmas cookies. You can tell what's on my mind. But pies, we just went through Thanksgiving. So mashed potatoes loaded with probably butter, cream, all these different things. Trying to think of other delicious casseroles. That's a huge one around the holidays, right? Cheesy potatoes, you know, all these things that on the face level aren't maybe the worst, but the way they're prepared, especially on the holidays, there's usually a lot of extra cream, lots of extra fat, cheeses, all these different things that can really rack up the calories, saturated fat, these things that we usually try to keep in check throughout the year. You're basically taking one specific meal and lumping everything that you shouldn't have, I'd say shouldn't have in excess, but putting it in front of you, which is really hard to not eat in excess when it's in front of you, right? Our bodies are made to like those types of foods, so it's hard to not overeat. So that's one big thing, family and friends, the types of food served at the meals. A lot of these foods are very, very high in calories, very, very high in saturated fat, these things that aren't the best for our heart health, blood sugar, etc. Also too, sometimes these foods aren't very satiating, so they're not very filling, I should say, which makes you want to eat more. A few other things, points we're going to note on. I'm going to kind of explain about these a little more, but family and friends, some societal pressure from them. The cold weather and darkness, this isn't something that I think it's talked about a lot, but in Iowa particularly, I always feel different during colder weather. Potentially we might be restricting too hard through the rest of the year, which can be kind of a detriment when we're getting to the holidays. And then the all or nothing mindset, which is something that's very prevalent in a lot of people when it comes to fitness goals. So family. Family is something that I honestly don't think it's addressed enough about when talking about being healthy, and it's the fact that your family does not, maybe you are lucky and they do have the same goals as you, but for the most time, they don't have the same health goals as you. And I think realizing this before you go into your meals, go into any holiday parties is important, because there can be a lot of societal and peer pressure. Myself personally, I started in health and wellness because I went to a lot of my family reunions and noticed a lot of my family was overweight. They complained about having this and that, and pain, aches, and diabetes, all these different things that weren't something I particularly wanted. So, long story short, their goals are probably not the same as yours. And knowing that before going into these meals are important, because they're going to design the meals for what they want, which is a good time. And I'm not saying you can't have a good time on Christmas and all these different things, but they're thinking, this is for love, this is for family, this is a time for good eats, right? When in your eyes, you know, maybe all the time should be that, and the meal doesn't necessarily have to embody love and kind of that comfort food we're thinking. So sometimes when I go to my grandma's house, and I love her to death, she'll make something that's so delicious, and she'll also make something else that's so delicious, and then 5 other things that are delicious. So for me, going and saying like, okay, maybe I'll have one portion of that, one portion of that, I'm not gonna have the rest, even though I know she made that specifically for me. It's a tough thing, but it's something that I personally do sometimes, because at the end of the day, knowing my goals, which are to try to remain healthy, fit, all these different things, are something that maybe my family is not the most in tune with. And you might have a family that's completely different, that's awesome, but it's maybe even more prevalent when you go to holiday parties too. Another story from my personal life, maybe you can relate. There are sometimes I go to events around the holidays, and they'll immediately say when I don't want dessert or something, or take a little bit less than everyone else. They'll always joke like, are you dieting? Like, oh, you watch your figure? All these little comments. And most of the time I'll just laugh, but sometimes I'll just say, yeah, yes. I know it's not completely normal to think about those things all the time, but to be different and being different in your health goals, you need to think different and do different things. Otherwise, you're going to be just like all the other statistics. So that kind of addresses family, and it's not an easy thing to address, especially if you love your family dearly, but if they truly love you, hopefully they understand if you turn down a full giant piece of cake on Christmas to maybe half a cake or a cookie, that's because you're trying to be healthy for yourself, and hopefully they support you. But that's a good thing to know going in. Also, the time of the year, as we've mentioned, I'd say about 2 to 3 months of the year are dedicated to the holidays, right? You go into the grocery stores, there's all these different cakes, cookies, deals, all these different things, right? It's hard to say no to these things just because it's the time of the year. It's completely marketing. But the interesting about this is it's all, for the most part, arbitrary. We're just deciding like, oh, it's the holidays because that's how it's always been. So it gets a sense of urgency of like, oh yeah, it's my, peppermint stuff and all these different things. Like, that sounds good, that sounds good, that sounds good. Go to Starbucks, like pumpkin spice stuff, right? All these different things around the holidays. It's very timely, so it kind of almost tricks your brain into thinking like, yeah, it's that time of year, let's go have some of these foods. So holidays are the times for good eats, and that's again a narrative that's typically been in society, but it's not something that's really substantiated by anything. It's arbitrary. Like, the holidays could be a time for healthy eats too. It just has never been like that. So just something to keep in mind. Marketing at stores, marketing is everywhere, right? Types of food. So we kind of already addressed this, but most of the foods eaten at these meals are very, very high in calories, and a lot of times not very filling for the amount of calories you get. And the way I describe these types of foods are high calorie, low density foods. And basically that means is the food volume, as in how much food you're eating, has a very large amount of calories for the actual volume of food amount you're eating. So if you think about maybe one scoop of mashed potatoes that has heavy cream, butter, and stuff that makes it taste really good in it, right? That just maybe like half a cup of that, if it has all those other things into it, is not going to be very filling. So it's going to have a low volume of food, not very filling, but very high in calories. Versus, again, this is a complete opposite, a cup of broccoli. A cup of broccoli, if you ate 1 cup of that, that's fairly filling. If you eat another cup of that, very filling. Another cup of that, you might feel sick. So it's interesting. 13 cups of broccoli, I just looked this up the other day, is 400 calories. 2 Pop-Tarts, so normally what's in a Pop-Tart thing, is also 400 calories. So it's that's a prime example of a high calorie food with low density. You could eat 2 Pop-Tarts, no problem, right? And hopefully you have something better than Pop-Tarts at your Christmas meals and stuff, but eat 2 Pop-Tarts, no problem, not very filling, extremely high in calories. 13 cups of broccoli, very, very low in calories, very, very filling. So a lot of the foods at these meals are the high calorie, not filling foods. So realize that. Most are. Some people have like vegetables and veggie trays, which if that is the case, I definitely recommend trying to fill up on some of that stuff maybe before you're having the casseroles and such. But it's going to kind of depend on what you're looking for. Portions of moderation will save you. So if there is one driving home point from all of this, it's the whole fact of calories. We kind of mentioned that calories will dictate your weight loss and everything. When people say eat moderation, it sounds good, but like, why does that work? It's, oh, eat moderation, good, drink in moderation, all these different things. Why does that work? It's completely based off of calories. So moderation just simply means like, if you are going to eat a full piece of cake, maybe you're going to eat instead half a piece, or maybe eat half a piece right now and half a piece later, versus a full piece now and a full piece later. The moderation is basically moderating your calories. Although it seems like maybe I'm moderating my portions and moderating portions is still moderating calories. That's the whole reason why this works. So if you're thinking about your favorite foods and stuff and you're eating them, you could be eating, what's a good Christmas food? Turkey. Something bad for you. Worse for you.
Green bean casserole.
Okay, sure. So green bean casserole. So let's think about, let's just say hypothetically like a bowl or a cup of green bean casserole is like 300 calories. I really don't know. 300, 400 calories. So a cup of that. If you literally just had half of that, that's half the calories. It's not because doing portions are specifically like magical. You're literally just cutting the calories in half. And as we just established, calories will control everything. So it's a really, really big thing to realize. If you really want something, as in you're going to a meal and there's multiple different things, and you're like, oh, I want all these different things, realize you could have every single thing and be okay, calorie-wise. You would just have to have very, very small portions of every little thing. Also, not all portions are created equal. As we just established, some foods are very high in calories and low in the overall fullness that we feel. Some are the complete opposite, right? So that's another really big thing to notice. Myself personally, when I go to holiday meals, I understand this. So if there's any type of vegetable or lean meat or protein, I try to get a decent amount of those first, because I know that those are very low in calories, high in volume. They'll make me feel full. They'll make me feel a lot less hungry later. And then I'll also have some of my quote unquote bad foods. And I say bad foods, but foods I try to not eat as often, I would just limit the portions of those and have bigger portions of foods that are less calories, higher in volume, right? That's a huge tip that I use for actually pretty much my whole life. I do that year round if I can, if I'm in good situations, not at birthday parties and such. That's why I don't have friends. Make it easier on your waistline, you just don't have parties and friends. Anyways, I think another big thing, since we just mentioned that portion control is a big thing, try not to limit foods at all, but do eat foods that you really, really want. So, for example, say there's like brownies, cookies, and fudge, and you're like, okay, those all sound good. I'm not gonna limit myself because I know if I do, I'm just gonna want it more. And then once you want it more, you might get to a point where you're just gonna binge on it. That's obviously what we want to avoid. So we want to give ourselves permission to have those foods, but in moderation, right? Moderating portions, moderating the calories. Out of those three foods, this is where being honest with yourself and being self-aware, ask yourself what you really want. Instead of like, all these foods are here, I have to have all these foods. You don't. It's your decision. You can say like, okay, that sounds okay. Like a brownie sounds good, and a cookie sounds good, but I really, really want fudge. That's what I've been looking forward to year round. Instead of having all those, maybe just have a little bit of an extra portion of fudge. Really, really enjoy it versus having kind of like this spread out sense of, I don't know how to describe it, but only spend your calories on the foods you really want. It's kind of an interesting way to look at it, but the overall amount of calories you have in a day, that's going to dictate your overall weight. It's kind of like a budget. And spend your calories on stuff that's really worth it. Like, be honest with yourself and enjoy it. That's another thing. I don't want to be like, you know, the Grinch and the Scrooge, like, enjoy the holidays, but this is something to be considered. You just have to be a little more mindful and a little bit more intentional about it when looking through these things. So a few other things, the weather. This is more related to like physical activity and getting out and doing stuff. In the summertime, when it's nice out, the chances of us going out for a walk are incredibly high. Even if we don't like walking, just because it's nice out, right? You go out, maybe you got a dog, maybe you got grandkids or just kids in town, and let's just go out for a walk just because it's nice out. It's a beautiful day. Let's go enjoy the birds chirping. Versus now, today's actually pretty mild. It has some pretty mild days, but over the weekend it was terrible. And I actually took a walk on Saturday and Sunday, and it was terrible. And the chances of me doing that every single day, if I knew it was always going to be like that, I probably would quit taking walks. I know someday it's going to be nice outside again. It's going to be summertime. We have seasons. But that's a huge barrier for people. Maybe they don't have a gym membership. Maybe gardening is one of their really big things where they get a lot of physical activity. If it's cold outside, nobody's going to be doing stuff. And that happens all the time, especially around the Midwest. In addition to cold, less time with the sunlight is also going to make us more tired early, right? Our bedtimes kind of shift. And then on top of that, daylight savings time makes it even worse. So it's a very unmotivating time to want to go out and be physically active. And maybe that even means just going and walking around the mall for a little bit. That's still some physical activity you might normally have that's getting taken away just because of the atmosphere and the mood. So doing your best to try to pep yourself up in a variety of different ways. Try to have some outings where maybe you're almost forcing yourself to come out to K-Side, do all these different things. Putting yourselves in positions where you need to get out and do stuff. It helps for your mood, for one. And once your mood's good, the chances of you actually being physically active, going out and doing some stuff is going to be much higher too. Okay, so restrictions throughout the year. This one might not be as prevalent with people, but I think it's something to note. If you are very, very restrictive on your food and eating throughout the year, and you get to the holidays, and again, 2 to 3 months of lots of family in town, lots of good food at the store, all of this marketing, holiday cookies, and I'm sorry, I kind of set you up for failure today, but all these different things, and you get to a point where it's like just unhinged, everyone's doing it, so I'm just gonna do it. It's gonna be very hard to not completely go all in. So through the rest of the year, enjoying times with family, enjoying times at birthday parties, not being too restrictive, so then once it comes to a point where you have more food options, you don't feel restricted, because you know at the end of the day, you can have a little bit of those Christmas cookies. You just have to monitor the portions. That's the biggest thing. This is something that I practice religiously. I eat fairly healthy every single night though, literally every single night, unless I don't know, a really bad day. I'll have some type of treat. Usually it's ice cream. If you have ice cream in the house, I'll have chocolate, something. But I also monitor my overall calories throughout the day. I track roughly, I have a general idea of how much I eat. I'm physically active, I get good sleep. I have all these different things, but I do give myself a little bit of grace when it comes to having sweets and stuff that might not be as healthy, simply because if I didn't, I would just want it more. I would just crave it more. And then once I get to the holidays, I've had this happen before, and I'm telling you from personal experience, I just go all in. And it's literally like a totally different person. So it's basically like having, I hate to say, a little bit of poison every day versus all at once. And doing stuff like that will lead us to our last point, the all or nothing mindset. So when people think about dieting, fitness, etc., they think you need to be perfect all the time. And if you're not, it's not worthwhile doing it. When in reality, you should probably never be totally perfect. And this is something, again, that I practice pretty regularly as well. You will likely fail multiple times when it comes to your diet, getting enough sleep, taking control of your mental health, being physically active, and that's totally okay. It's very hard to be perfect. Nobody's gonna be perfect. But this idea that because you're not perfect, it's not worthwhile in doing it is completely, it's not good logic. And it's something I really wanna try to steer you away from. I want you to think about how people become quote unquote unhealthy and how people become quote unquote healthy. If you think about becoming healthy, it takes a lot of days, a lot of consecutive days of doing really good. Say in a year, you're eating really good, you're working out 5 days a week. I'm not saying you have to, but just say for example, and there's maybe 1 to 2 weeks out of that entire year that you don't do anything. You eat like crap, you don't work out. How is that gonna affect you for the rest of the year if you're consistent through the rest of the year? It's not gonna really do anything. It might even be decent for your mental health and overall sustainability of it. On the flip side, there's some people that will take that and they say they have one bad week, and because they had one bad week, it literally takes the entire year of everything they built up off. And that's not true at all. One bad day of eating, one bad week of eating will not set you back, just like one good day of eating or one good week of eating will set you good. It's all about consistency. What does most of your life look like? That's another big thing. Realizing you'll probably mess up. So when I go into the holidays, I have all these tools and things that I remind myself, but I also remind myself that I'm human, and there are some times where a craving just grabs you a hold and you're like, I'm just gonna do it. And being okay, again, once you do mess up, and realizing that it's okay, because that one day is largely irrelevant. So the biggest thing in all this, remember that calories will dictate everything. You can have your favorite foods, but realize that some of those favorite foods are gonna come at more of a caloric burden than others. But That doesn't mean you can't eat them, it's just realizing that I can eat 200 calories of green bean casserole, and I can also eat 200 calories of broccoli. I will feel much full, likely much better, and not overeat on other stuff if I eat the broccoli versus that. And that's kind of it at the end of the day. So kind of using some of those tools. I think a lot of this is just going in with a little bit more intentional of a mindset about the holidays and all these parties and holiday drinks and everything, but just being a little more intentional and realizing you have a lot of control. Sometimes when we go to these parties, we think we need to appease everyone, and you don't. Eat what you want, enjoy it, and it's simply that. So.